we're still top of the league at Christmas, and that is the most important thing for us. Welcome back to the Arsenal Humans podcast with me, Luce. I hope you're all good. As you can see if you're watching on YouTube, I've got just one little prop. It's a little Christmas tree, because obviously, in the words of Phoebe Buffet, if anyone is a Friends fan, happy Christmas Eve. I thought I'd just jazz it up a bit, make it a little bit Christmassy, a little bit festive. But anyways, I hope, because obviously this is the last episode before Christmas, I hope whatever Christmas looks like for you, or whatever this break looks like for you, if obviously you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you have the best time doing whatever it is that you normally do, any little traditions, everything like that. But obviously this is the Arsenal Humans podcast, so we're going to talk about Arsenal. And I feel like last week's episode was super busy. We had a lot of games to look back on, a lot of games to look ahead to. I feel like this week we've got a lot of games to look back on and a lot of new things happening in the club and everything, which sort of leads me nicely onto the warm-up poll, which is something that it's not been fully confirmed, but basically some sort of breaking news that came out of the club. Not really directly from the club, so I feel like obviously this is probably maybe rumours as well at this point, but I thought I'd just ask my warm-up poll based on this. It's the idea that safe standing is set to be installed in the clock end lower of the Emirates Stadium this summer ahead of next season, and then I think the season after as well they're looking to maybe install some in the North Bank lower end as well. I sort of was like, oh, this is interesting. I looked at the comments and most people were saying they like this idea, but then there were a few that were like, oh, this is a really bad idea. So I went, you know what, instead of me making up my own mind, let me ask you guys. So I basically just put out, is the idea of having safe standing good or not for Arsenal? 86% of you said yes it is, 14% of you said no. But I'm someone that's experienced being at the Emirates for both a men's and women's game, so I feel like I can sort of maybe speak a little bit on both. But I feel like obviously there's people that would go consistently to the men's game, so I'd love to hear especially your thoughts in the comments below, because obviously I'm someone that more goes to all the women's games. So I feel like, this was a bit mixed. Obviously 86% of you said yes, this is a good idea, 14% of you said no, it's not, and I feel like this is kind of quite mixed, as much as obviously this is like dominated by yes, this is a great idea. I think ultimately this would be quite a good idea. I feel like you see it at a lot of stadiums, a lot of standing, and it creates that atmosphere, and I feel like that is the comment that word sort of was filtered throughout the comments, basically like, oh, this is a great idea for the atmosphere. I do feel like already if you go to a Premier League fixture, people are already standing, so I feel like maybe there was a lot of complaints of maybe the kids, when they try and stand up now, they'll be blocked because usually they'd stand on seats, and that's something that normally happens anyways. I do think it means that there'll be cheaper tickets, which is obviously great, but then there are obviously, when you look at the women's game, it will be quite different, because usually you only really stand if there's goals necessarily, and it's more of a sitting down environment, whereas with the men's obviously there's certain spaces where you would stand for the whole game. So I feel like it sort of will affect each game differently, if that makes sense, but ultimately I do think that it is quite a good idea. It will bring more atmosphere, and I feel like that's something that Arsenal are very keen on improving. Like obviously when someone scores, Arteta's idea was that the first name said by the announcer, the stadium announcer, and then the crowd says the surname. So for instance, if you're like Bukayo Saka scores, the announcer will go Bukayo and everyone goes Saka, like that sort of vibe. So I feel like they're trying to find lots of ways to improve the club, and I feel like it's great that our club is wanting to do that and take the initiative to try and improve things. So I feel like this can be a positive overall. Obviously it's still early days and this is sort of just an initial idea that's happened, but I'd love to know your thoughts. As always, comment down below, whether you're listening on Spotify or watching YouTube. I'd love to hear from you. Let's move on to whatever the weather section, where we can hear more about what has come from the club this week, whether that's on or off the pitch. Okay, so whatever the weather this week, we're just going for all sunny headlines. I feel like, but especially as I said last week, the weather's not really, especially if you're living obviously in the UK, the weather's not really giving too much, especially around Christmas. So I thought I'd bring you guys the sun, bring some sunny headlines. The first one, we of course have to talk about the Sports Personality of the Year awards. Michelle Adjumang won the Young Sports Personality of the Year, and then Thierry Henry got the Lifetime Award. And I think it's just so great to see Arsenal heritage, all different forms, whether it's players that are on loan, players that used to play for the club, but people that are associated with Arsenal are excelling on the highest stages, so it's just great to see that. The second thing is Mikel Arteta confirms that Gabriel will be back before the new year, which is something that I think every Arsenal fan has put at the top of their Christmas list, because it's something we want. Like, we need to have that stability at the back. Obviously, I'll mention in a bit in the games that we saw Saliba back, which was great to add that stability. But I feel like this is just something that we definitely need. And then the final headline is that Arsenal are through to the semi-final of the Women's Subway Cup. This is something that is just so encouraging because this year we're aiming for silverware across all competitions, across the men's and women's games. So I feel like this is our first little glimpse of, okay, we're actually getting closer. We're not getting knocked out. Whereas same can't be said for like last year. I think we got knocked out to Liverpool, I'm pretty sure. And the previous years, we just don't get to those final stages. So this is really encouraging. I feel like it's the start of a new silverware phase going into 2026. So I feel like we're in a good position. But yeah, that's sort of some headlines from the week. Obviously, if you have your own sunny, cloudy, rainy headlines, let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. But yeah, let's get on to the games because we've got 3 games to look back at and then another 2 games to look ahead to. Okay, so as always, we're going to go in chronological order. We had the first game, which was in the Women's Champions League. It was OH Leuven 0, Arsenal 3. So it was a great start to the week. I did actually predict it to be a 2-0 win. I think I predicted most of these to be a 2-0 win, to be fair, but it was great that we exceeded that expectation. It is interesting because the first takeaway from this game as a whole, I'm just going to go straight into what this result means for us. But it basically means that we're through to the knockout stage where we end up playing the same team we've just played against. And if we win both of it, obviously it's across 2 legs, if we win both fixtures, we then face Chelsea in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, which is just insane because firstly it's not great for English football because you want the English teams to get as far in the competition as possible, but obviously this means that one English team will get knocked out at this stage. But also I do feel like we're going to have a trend, the same that Chelsea and City women had last year. It's going to be Arsenal and Chelsea this year where we're constantly playing each other across different competitions, obviously the WSL as well, and I do think the League Cup as well could come into play if we get through to the finals of that. So I just feel like there's a lot that's going to happen, so it's quite interesting. But in my head, I'm thinking that if we do get them in the quarterfinals, it can only be a good thing for Arsenal because we know what it's like to win the Champions League. They don't. We know what it's like to compete across 2 legs in this tournament and succeed. I don't think they do in those final stages. So I think it would just be so nice to prevent Chelsea from getting another Champions League trophy, even if it doesn't mean we win, but I'm hoping we could go on and do that. It would just be so great. But obviously I don't want to get ahead of myself because obviously we need to actually get through the knockout stage against this team. But this game was very encouraging on a lot of different fronts. I think that my second takeaway has to come from Olivia Smith. I just love how confident Olivia Smith is on the ball, and she's so confident in her own ability and own movement that most of her goals are created through solo efforts. Obviously, we saw at the Emirates Stadium a couple weeks back where she went round about 4 Liverpool players to then find the net. And I think the same with this. It's just so nice to see her efforts from distance, and she has that confidence. And I feel like she's becoming one of our most consistent players across all the competitions. The second person who, obviously, I feel like I always mention in these competitions, but it has to be Alessia Russo. She is probably the definition of consistency. She always shows up. She's always very calm and composed. So had to shout out them too. But that was the first game of the week. The second game, going into this Everton game, this was a big moment for us because the day before, City faced West Ham. They obviously won. They went top of the league. So if we drew, we'd end up either being joint first or we'd go second, one of the two. But either way, there was no way that we could have lost this game. And luckily, we didn't. It was a 1-0 win for Arsenal, a classic 1-0 win to Arsenal. Obviously, I did predict this to be a 2-0 win, but it doesn't matter. We got it across the line, and that was all thanks to my first takeaway, which is Gyokeres. He obviously got a penalty. I mean, there's been so much criticism. A lot of people saying that people need to feed the ball into Gyokeres, and that's why he's not finding the net. But I don't know if at this stage in the competition we can rely on other people feeding the ball, or if it's something that he's got to go out his way to create those goals. I think the best strikers can go out their way and make the goals for themselves rather than rely on other people to pass it. So I think there's a bit of a debate between what can you lean more to, but either way, he found the net, and honestly, it was a rocket of a penalty. Like, it was so powerful that I was like, even if it's not even completely on target, or if the keeper goes the same way, it's going to get through their hand because it was just so powerful. So it was great to see, and I feel like he needed that confidence to go into the Christmas period. It's obviously another clean sheet, which is my second takeaway, and obviously we've got to shout out Saliba because it was great to see him back on the pitch. I know that not the whole game he was the dominant centre-back, but I do feel like it was just great to see another clean sheet under his belt. And obviously, as I mentioned in the headline, hopefully Gabrielle is back very soon. So it would be great to see that partnership again. And the third takeaway, I feel like this is me just sort of picking out key individuals, and I feel like I can mention Rice and Saka every single week, and I feel like I could highlight Rice and Saka every single week because they're just so good. They're so pivotal for us. One of them will get the player of the match most weeks, let's be real here, and I just feel like they deserve it because they're so consistent. They show up and they are arguably two of the best in their respective positions in the league, so it's great that we've got them on our side. So I feel like 1-0 was a great result for us. Obviously it would be great to get more, but we're still top of the league at Christmas, and that is the most important thing for us. And the final game that happened only a few days ago, it was Crystal Palace 0, Arsenal 2. And you know what, it was interesting because I was trying to watch all these different games. I was watching them on YouTube and I was sort of flicking between, obviously Chelsea won like 9-1, United got 3, I think it was 2-1 against Spurs. Like, it was so interesting trying to watch all of the different games. But this game was actually so uneasy, I felt like, for the whole game. Like, Crystal Palace, they did well, to be fair, because it stayed 1-0 for so long. And then obviously my first takeaway has to be about Beth Mead's movement in the box, because that second goal that came in literally like within the last 10 minutes was so beautifully done that I think if the ball didn't go in, everyone would be like, what are you doing, in a way, because it was almost confusing because she got the ball and then she sort of was just taking so many touches, and I was like, oh my god, you're taking so many touches. Flicks it back, Stina just shots it top right, and it was a beautiful goal. So it's just good that we were in those spaces, and it's almost good that she held on to the ball for longer than I think everyone was thinking she would, because obviously it ended up finding the net. So it's just great to see players like that. It was also great to see Williamson back on the pitch, starting in the starting lineup with the captain's armband on, which is something we haven't seen the whole of the season. So it was just great to see that. And another player that I want to highlight, I feel like I'm just highlighting a lot of players in these takeaways, but another player I want to highlight is Kyra Cooney-Cross. I feel like it was so good. She was first to most of the balls. The way she literally danced in and out of about 4 players was so good to see in the midfield space. I feel like there was more confidence in her, maybe because she's been given more trust in those positions, but it was just so good to see her on the pitch. And obviously this result means, as I said in the headlines, means that we're through to the semi-final of the Subway Women's League Cup, which I'm just so excited. So yeah, pretty good week. As a whole, we won 3 games. I predicted 3 wins, so you know what, it was quite optimistic as we head into the Christmas break. Obviously now the women are off for a few weeks on their Christmas break, but we do have 2 games in the men's. One actually happens in literally a few hours' time, so let's get into that now. Okay, perfect. We are already at the predictions section of the episode. As I said, the women aren't back until the 10th of January, but don't worry because we've still got Arsenal football before then. Tonight, Arsenal against Crystal Palace, which is literally weird because I've just basically mentioned that obviously for the women. So tonight they're playing at 8 p.m. in the Carabao Cup, which is obviously the EFL Cup. It is the quarterfinals, which obviously I just said we've just played in a quarterfinals of another League Cup. So I'm hoping the outcome is the same for this quarterfinal against Palace. It is at home. I feel like Eze will probably find the score sheet like he did last time he played against his former club. And obviously the winner of this game will end up facing Chelsea in the semi-finals. So I feel like there's a few clubs that keep coming up against each other. I'm going to go with a 2-0 win. I feel like we will get to that semi-final, so hopefully it will be a good evening for us tonight. The second game is at the weekend. It's on Saturday the 27th, 3 p.m. in the Premier League, just after Christmas. Weird we're not playing on Boxing Day, but it's quite nice because then we can continue the festive spirit, hopefully. Obviously it's against Brighton. I'm going to predict it to be a 3-0 win. I feel like we need to have higher scoring games because we just need to find the net more. We need to have more confidence in ourselves. I mean, no matter how we get the win, we need to just get the win. That's obviously the most important thing. And if it is a 1-0 win, then that's okay. And I feel like people are the football's a bit boring or this, that and the other. But if we're getting those wins, it obviously doesn't matter. I mean, I feel like selfishly as Arsenal fans, as a fan of the club, I want to see great football. I want to see lots of goals being scored rather than it being a 1-0 because it's so uneasy. It makes us all so nervous. So hopefully it'll be another 2 wins from the next 2 games we have this week. Yeah, I feel like that was a lot. I feel like I went through that kind of quickly. But I hope if you've watched the end, I hope you enjoyed watching this episode as always. This isn't the last episode of 2026. I do have another one coming out on Tuesday. And then I think that will be the last one actually. So this is the penultimate episode of 2026, which is kind of crazy to say. It's episode, 58, I think it is. Which is crazy, and I appreciate everyone that has been on this journey, no matter whether you started from episode 1 or whether you joined in episode 50, wherever you joined, I really appreciate it. And if you haven't already given me a follow on Spotify or subscribed on YouTube, I'd really appreciate it because I like the little space that I'm growing each week. So yeah, that's all I have to say. As I said at the top of the episode, at the start, if you do celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a great time with doing whatever Christmas looks like for you. And obviously, if you don't, I hope you have a great time off work. I'm hoping lots of people are off work. For me, I'm actually working tomorrow, which is obviously Christmas Eve, and then I'm back working pretty much a couple of days after Christmas. But hopefully other people get a bit more rest and time away. But yeah, hope you're good, and I will see you on Tuesday. Have a great Christmas, have a great time off, and yeah, I'll see you just before the new year.